Hello everyone, my name is Ralph Carter. I am a Chief Network Solutions Architect with CDI, and today I'm going to show you three use cases that are commonly requested by customers around ServiceNow IT Service Management and integrations with different tools such as VMware and Cisco cloud management platforms and configuration management platforms like Ansible, and show you how these various platforms can work together with software-defined network fabrics like Cisco ACI and VMware NSX to basically achieve business outcomes. Outcomes around agile application provisioning, automated day two application security operations, and a simplified disaster recovery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple slides to kind of show you what I mean by those three different use cases and how they work. So to start off, let's go through the application provisioning here. So what you would have is your typical IT service management, right? So you would have your requester. They would be maybe somebody part of the application development team or an IT admin or an end user, and they would go to this ServiceNow portal, right? And they would request something, right? Something could be, I want to request a light bulb change in my office, or maybe I want to provision an application, or I need a server, or I need a group of virtual machines with a load balancer, et cetera, whatever's in that blueprint or that catalog to be able to provision, right? Your T-shirt sizes. So in this particular case, this individual requests this service. It would go through a formal approval process. That approval process can include the requester's manager or IT, right? Somebody has to make that approval after review. So this would actually integrate with a cloud management platform such as VMware, vRealize Automation, or it could work with Cisco CloudCenter, right? There's different solutions that could be integrated with ServiceNow, and through various security financial policies and workflows and integrating with different tools, we would provision something like some kind of virtual machine. In this case, we would select a provision of virtual machine or an application, and we would choose where are we deploying this workload to, right? We could deploy it to Amazon, AWS, to Azure, or maybe we're deploying it on-prem. On-prem could be a Cisco ACI environment. It could be a VMware NSX or traditional vSphere environment. And part of this provisioning process, we're configuring the application, leveraging different enterprise tools. We're configuring, Apache and MySQL or SQL Server or whatever, load balancer. We're deploying these applications onto this VM or group of virtual machines. And we're also deploying this virtual machine in some kind of network, right? Network and security. Now, the reason why I put these into consideration here is because we're also doing something like updating the CMDB, right, with what network we deployed the virtual machine into. So in this particular case, maybe we are leveraging software-defined networking like ACI or NSX, and we're placing this virtual machine into a VXLAN, right? Maybe we don't want to be limited by the 4,000 or so VLANs that traditionally limit you, where people put multiple applications on the same VLAN. And in this case, we don't have a 4,000 limit, right? We have maybe, if we're leveraging VXLAN, we have 16 million. So there's no reason why you can't tie your application, which is a group of virtual machines that make up your application, why we cannot tie it to a particular VXLAN. And then we're recording that VXLAN information in the CMDB so that we could call on it or reference it later, which I'll show you in the next couple slides. And we're also recording the security here, right? So security meaning, for example, if we're doing VMware NSX, we're placing it into, a new security group in NSX, or a group of different security groups, like maybe the web tier goes into a web security group, the app tier goes into the app security group, right, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but we're also recording that in the CMDB, and the CMDB is our pretty much real-time source of truth. Okay, So in this particular case, the request gets completed, right? And the ticket gets updated and closed pretty much. And the reason why I'm showing this, right, what are the benefits of this particular approach, this integration where you're tying in the ServiceNow as that front end with the cloud management platform, with the different infrastructures, software-defined infrastructures, whether it's AWS, Azure, or something on-prem. We are, as a result, automating the application provisioning, right? We are incorporating different business processes. We're integrating IT disciplines, right? So, for example, getting the network, the security, the compute, the storage, teams together in a room to deploy something sometimes can take longer than expected, right? Sometimes when in larger enterprise companies, it may even take 3 months to get some kind of workload out there. But by collaborating and working through and defining different blueprints, right? Maybe different t-shirt sizes for deploying an application or a 3-tier application or 2-tier whatever, and also collaborating on what those networks and security and et cetera policies could be, we can then call on that blueprint and deliver that application in a much more agile fashion. So we're definitely promoting IT agility. And what the big thing here, which is critical to this whole process, is the CMDB, right? So we are enhancing the CMDB with this critical information about this application, as far as the networking and security, etc. Okay. So what's the second use case, right? So now we have all that rich information in that CMDB. So what can we do with it? So for example, here we go back to our IT service management. We have the same requester or maybe somebody from that department. And now they go into ServiceNow and they fill out a security service request form as an example, right? And what happens is I'm able to correlate that requester, right? His department or him or he or her, their actual request, right? The application that they previously provisioned, right? I'm able to correlate which one that is. So maybe they provisioned the prod financial application, right? So in this particular case, I'm giving them the capability of clicking on their application, and maybe they want to make some security modifications. Maybe part of the application provisioning phase, we put them into like an any unrestricted rule set, right? So with NSX, we maybe put them into security groups, and those security groups just have a full open access. Or maybe if it's Cisco ACI, we put them into different endpoint groups that were part of a bridge domain or different bridge domains, whatever. But they have any access, and there's no security enforcement. But in this particular case, if I was to use as an example NSX, I already know what security groups, okay, I placed them in, right? So I'm correlating them. I'm looking to the CMDB to see this particular prod financial application, what security groups is a part of. And I'm giving the end user, the requester, those options in the dropdown. So I know that part of the application provisioning phase, I place them into the prod finance web group and the prod finance app group and prod finance DB group, and I'm giving them the capability of modifying security for that application. So in this particular case, they're selecting source, the web, destination app, and I'm enabling HTTP and HTTPS, and I'm allowing that. Maybe another row would be the app to the database. I'm allowing TCP 3306, which is MySQL, and given the capability of submitting that. So now this would create a ticket. Obviously, would be routed for approval. The manager or the IT admin would go through some formal approval process, review to make sure that this requester's the security requests comply with policy, or that it's okay, or that he didn't make any mistakes, etc. And then once this is approved, that can kick off a process, for example, in Ansible, right? So in this case, we would put all the programming logic in Ansible in the different playbooks. This would most likely be something like Ansible Tower or AWX. And from the ServiceNow standpoint, we are passing those form fields like source, destination, service, action. We're passing those as variables through a RESTful API call to Ansible Tower. And Ansible Tower, or AWX in this case, is running specific templates or jobs with those variables and running logic, etc., to, through its provisioning process to deploy the firewall rule. In this case, it would be an NSX deployment. It would provision that firewall rule into NSX Manager, right? NSX Manager would write that rule to its distributed firewall, right? Part of the process could be validation and testing, which would be all configured, created within Ansible through different logic, different Python modules that maybe are created to make that happen, whatever the validation and testing needs to be, just as if it was a human sitting here and making a decision to create these firewall rule sets, right? And then the benefit here is that I'm now updating the CMDB, so I have pretty much a source of truth updated with information, and I'm completing the request. Now, the benefits of this particular scenario is that I'm automating my microsegmentation policy, right? So I don't have to log into NSX Manager and create those firewall rule sets. I can provide that experience through that IT Service Management portal, right? In this particular example. So I'm automating microsegmentation. I'm definitely accelerating time to execution, and we have a lot of customers that it takes them a longer than usual to kind of implement microsegmentation or implement security for east to west. But keep in mind, this also is not limited for east to west. This can also be applied for north-south. That same rule in the same or different format can be applied to some northbound firewall, whether it's Cisco or Palo Alto, for example. Ansible can connect to various platforms. But we're definitely accelerating time to execution here. And the other big thing is that we're tracking application security changes. And the cool thing about this is that, how many times have you walked into a network and you looked at a firewall or a switch and you have all these lines of configuration and you don't know what they're actually doing and what application they're affecting. So a lot of times when you go into this network, you're going to look at these firewall rules and you're not going to want to touch them because you're worried that it might break something. So in this particular case, because we're tracking the security changes that are applied for this particular application, if this application is ever decommissioned in the future, we know exactly which rule IDs, right, or which contracts in ACI or NSX, whatever it is, we know exactly which ones to remove for our housekeeping, right? And also, if we ever get audited, and if you ever get audited, or you want to run a report to find out exactly which firewall rules were applied to which application, right? You can do that here within ServiceNow's reporting, right? And the other thing is here, which is huge, is that we're integrating the CMDB, right? The Configuration Management Database. So another use case I'm going to show you here, based on that information that we populated in the CMDB through our first two use cases, right? Automating disaster recovery. So in the same way, I have my app requester, but in this case, they select a different drop-down or a different form. In this case, would be a DR event request form. And again, I'm able to correlate which application they own, or which applications are available. In this case, they're going to select Prod Financial and give them the option of conducting a DR event. But when I do the DR event, I don't want to affect other applications, right, in that data center. And because I'm able to tie that application to a VXLAN, and I'm allocating a VXLAN to this application, which is I'm also allocating an IP subnet dedicated to this application that sits behind a VXLAN backed port group in this case, right? I'm not disrupting anything else. So in this case, I'm going to request my DR event, ticket gets created, routed for approval, and then I'm initiating connectivity similar. I'm providing a RESTful API call. I'm integrating with VMware vRealize Orchestrator, or a VMware SRM, right, or Ansible for additional validation, right? There's a lot of different things you can do here, But the goal is to get into the provisioning process where I'm initiating my DR event. So in this case, let's say we have an NSX infrastructure, which is there's a primary and a DR. We have NSX VXLAN between them, so we have layer 2 extensibility. So in this case, we can quickly identify which workload makes up prod financial, and we can initiate the actual DR event where we are modifying, in this case, edge gateways, telling them that, hey, don't use this edge gateway for ingress, or make it less preferable, modify the dynamic routing to influence traffic for this workload through the DR instead of the primary data center, right? And we're not doing things like changing IPs or DNS information. You know, this could be a storage remotion, or it could be a cold migration. But again, leveraging the power of software-defined fabrics, we don't have to do things like change IPs, and we can maintain that same network between both locations, right? And we could combat asymmetrical flows by leveraging the different design options with IGPs. So in this particular case, we're failing over the workload to the DR. The workload at the DR comes up. We run different validation and tests, make sure that the application is up and running, and then we fail it back, right? And again, this can be all scheduled, coordinated. Maybe it's a Saturday night cutover, you know, whatever, right? This could be all pre-programmed and automated. And then the request would get closed. The CMDB would get updated, and the request would get completed. Now, the benefits of this particular scenario is that we're automating our disaster recovery. We're using the CMDB to our advantage. We know exactly which applications are live. We're given the requester the capability of scheduling their own DR event, whether it's IT or the actual application or requester. But obviously it's on IT's terms, right? They're not just going to press a button and it's going to conduct a DR event, but it'll be scheduled, right? But we're leveraging CMDB information to be able to automate this and make it more of a successful outcome, and remove a lot of the human element, right? Remove a lot of the human risk out of it, right? And as a result, we're decreasing the RTO. And like I mentioned, we're reducing risk in this overall process. And the big thing here is we're integrating the CMDB. And one of the biggest things here for a lot of our customers is that we're meeting compliance and regulatory requirements. So, you know, a lot of our customers have auditors that want to know that, number one, want to make sure that the application or the workload, you know, is DR capable, has been tested. You know, DR events are performed every 3 or 6 months or yearly, whatever that is. And they want to know, how long did it take? How long is the application going to be down for if a true DR event happens, right? So by leveraging automation, especially fronting it with ServiceNow, leveraging the CMDB, selecting the applications that you know, were deployed in this fashion, you know, we can streamline a lot of this capability. Now, the other thing to note is that, do you have to, you know, go through the application provisioning step to be able to populate the CMDB with all those fields? You don't have to. It would be much more elegant if you did, so there's a proper workflow out of it. But you could do things like with ServiceNow's discovery, and you could discover a lot of this information and do service mapping to get a better understanding of what that application, you know, the constructs of the application, what the IP address of the port group, where it lives, and all that information, to be able to populate a lot of these things, to be able to you know, perform like the day 2 security operations or automating the disaster recovery. So thank you for your time. I hope this was informative. And if you guys want to have any more information or would like to see demos or some consultation services, please reach out to us at cdillc.com. Thank you.